What an incredible season it's been for both Liverpool and Barcelona so far. But all things considered, who's been the better team? Well, here's what the stats say. As you can see, 44 matches for Liverpool played so far compared to 41 for Barcelona. It is Liverpool who've had more wins, 33 compared to 30. But Barcelona have scored far and away many more goals, 125 versus 102. 37 conceded by Liverpool, 45 for Barca. Let's start, Chris, by talking about the Spanish side. What makes this young Barcelona team so enjoyable to watch under Hansi Flick?
Well, I think it's the extra dimension that Flick has brought to the team, because we all know how capable they are of playing on the ball, but I think they have a bit more teeth to them now in the forward press, which also can sometimes leave them exposed with their incredibly high line. But I just think that Flick style on the continent is such a difficult side to play against. We saw his Bayern side. He was able to get them well drilled, and they were dominant in the Bundesliga and in the Champions League en route to winning it before he took the Germany job. And Barcelona kind of have a similar identity about them. I think Raphinha leads them in that respect. He has that ability to create and be a really talented player, showing quality up front while also showing that forward press. And really, if you're asking the question, why is this Barca team so great? Part of it's the style, but part of it is it's so enjoyable to watch a team of kids grow up together and compete and get results at a very high level. You look at so far in this calendar year, they have yet to lose a game. They score so many goals. There are some frustrating performances along the way. There is the inconsistency of playing youth, but ultimately, so many academy products have made this team fascinating.
As for Liverpool, Arne Slot obviously inherited a pretty good team from Jurgen Klopp, but I've certainly noticed that they are a lot more organised, rigid, perhaps calmer compared to the chaotic scenes that we saw sometimes under Jurgen Klopp. They were obviously a brilliant side to watch and very successful playing under the German. But Arne Slot's put his own stamp on this team, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I think that at times Liverpool was almost a little bit too over-reliant on the big Klopp speech to the lads in the dressing room. We're going to get going. Go at them. First 15 minutes, go, 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 go. Create an early moment of collision, of pressure on the opponent, and then go and win the game. I think Slot is the needed extra club in the bag, as it were, where, yes, they can go and press the heck out of their opponents and make their lives miserable with their intensity, but also they have a different way of playing. They've kind of changed the geometry of where everyone lines up. Trent Alexander-Arnold is no longer holding his position wide. He's coming central and playing balls from a different area. Ryan Gravenberch has had an evolved position to get something out of holding midfield, where maybe they needed a big signing like a Zubimendi, but instead they went for an internal option and found a great option in the middle of the park. So he has reinvented a team that did not add very much. You would go back to the summer window. They added Federico Chiesa, who's hardly played in this team, and they added Mamardashvili, who's since gone on loan to Valencia. They haven't added really any major first-team contributors. They've brought a few more academy kids through that have got more minutes, but for the most part, this is the team. And yet they play a little bit differently. All their best players are playing like their best player. We saw Alisson do that midweek. We've seen Van Dijk have a brilliant season. We've seen Salah have a Ballon d'Or quality season. This is a Liverpool team that's functioning at a very high level, I think, at least in part, to your point about the way that they're playing differently from years past.
One of the criticisms lobbed kind of at both managers is that just inherited a great team and they haven't really had to change too much. But which of the two do you think inherited more from their predecessors?
I think Arne Slot did. I think if you look at the core of that team was really high functioning, and they went and invested well in that midfield, and Alexis McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai, who have both been really good players. That forward line, they had kind of succession planned in some way, I think, with volume, by bringing in Gakpo, by bringing in Luis Diaz, with Jota, and obviously with Salah on that right side. They managed to plan well enough to replace Firmino and Mane in that front three. They've got a really high-functioning attack. Van Dijk is one of the best in the world. Alisson is one of the best in the world. I think when you compare it to Barcelona, yes, at some point Xavi won the league, but remember last year how far away they were from being anywhere close to Real Madrid. With the financial issues that you inherit, you're kind of inheriting a club that hasn't reckoned with the fact that they're just in a different reality. They don't have the same money that they used to anymore, and he kind of has to make it work with maybe one or two new additions. They brought in Dani Olmo, but other than that, it's all internal options that they brought through, and he keeps bringing in more. more players have come through in this season. You look at what Fermin Lopez has done in that midfield as a player off the bench. I think that Hansi Flick had a lot more work to do to not only restore the team to a high level, but in some ways to regain that Barca mentality that we can go, we're a top level team. We're going to be at the top table in the Champions League. I think right now, of any team in the competition, they're favorites to get to the semifinal by virtue of the draw that they have on their way to it. And that wasn't a guarantee. We saw them get to a quarterfinal last year and really play terribly in the second leg against Paris Saint-Germain, having a red card in that mix as well. But I think this Barca team are much more solid. They have a much stronger defensive identity, in my opinion. And I think Flick has done a job which was not obvious. There were a lot of managers that turned this job down because it didn't look like it was an easy opportunity for someone to go and have success.
And before we ask who's better of the two teams, one of the parallels that clearly can be drawn is the fact that they do lean on really experienced, proven stars. On the Liverpool side, you've got Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, and Barcelona. The line is led by Robert Lewandowski, who contributes, obviously, still loads of goals, but also so much in the dressing room, showing these young players how to do it as a professional footballer at this level.
Yeah, how to achieve a high standard. And I think in some ways that can be forgotten in modern football is very often defined by young, pressing, energetic legs. Do you have the energy, the athleticism, and the physical capability to make life difficult on your opponent? But sometimes that does eschew experience, which is a really important part of the game. And Robert Lewandowski, as you mentioned, hitting such a high standard at his age is showing that level of professionalism to maybe a group of young players that, yeah, they're youthful and they're great right now, but they have to preserve themselves. You look at a player like Lamine Yamal, the number of games he's already played. Pedri has already played. Gavi has already played. They're going to have to preserve themselves for 700, 800 games that they're likely to play over the course of their career. And they have no greater example than Lewandowski up front, who has preserved himself to the point where he can still be a top-level goal scorer in a top-level team. It can sometimes be forgotten when everyone's chasing the next 20, 21, 22-year-old to be the energetic legs in your team, that experience is still a key part. And I don't think Barcelona would be where they are, not just, as you say, with Lewandowski's goals, but with what Lewandowski brings to a team in the overall.
If we're to compare the star players, Salah and Raphinha, I think over the course of their careers so far, Salah, you'd go with him if you were choosing a better one. But just focusing on this season, who do you think's had a better season, Salah or Raphinha?
I think it's very close. I think Raphinha defines a lot of the way that this team play. If you look at the difference in goals, it can almost be entirely ascribed to the difference in the number of penalties that each player has converted. Actually, in terms of not penalty goals, Raphinha has scored more. Mo Salah has more assists. I think Salah, in some ways, more defines the overall shape of the season, of the way that everything is going, the number of goals, the fact that he's doing it amidst that contract dispute. I know that sounds ridiculous, but narrative does play a role in a lot of these things. I think Raphinha, having struggled in previous seasons, this doesn't seem like the crowning achievement of his career. This seems like his breakout. And I feel like in some ways, Salah edges it just in that little bit of a respect of there's so much conversation around him. He is the player in the Premier League, whereas you look at La Liga, and even in this Barcelona team, Yamal gets so many headlines, Lewandowski gets so many headlines, all the Real Madrid stars are getting headlines. So I think Raphinha, in some ways, hurts for a little bit of that star power, but that's kind of a ridiculous way to talk about it. If we're talking about on-field performance, Raphinha has been absolutely sensational. The fact that he's even in the conversation with Salah wouldn't have been in the realm of possibility after the last few seasons that he's had at Barcelona. So you give him an enormous amount of credit. And if he is behind Mo Salah, it's by this much. He's been brilliant.
And you can almost look at that conversation from the reverse. If you were to take both of them out of their teams, who would still be better off? And I would say Salah has more of an impact for me than Raphinha. If you were to remove Raphinha from this Barcelona team, I think they would be able to perform. So
let's say in this thought experiment, you're replacing Mo Salah with, I don't know, Gakpo or Luis Diaz, but Barcelona, you're replacing him probably with Ferran Torres. I don't think Barcelona would be where they were with Ferran Torres. I can see a scenario where maybe Liverpool could survive for a period if Mo Salah weren't around. I think they have a little bit more cover and a little bit more depth. I think in terms of their indispensability, you can make an argument. Again, it's ridiculous to argue against Mo Salah because he's been so good for the Liverpool team. But I want to underscore that Raphinha defines for me that forward line of Barcelona. I don't think they would be where they are without him. So I think that indispensability is a slight maybe tick in the favor of Raphinha.
So really quickly before we go to break, who is the best team in the world right now between Liverpool and Barcelona?
I think if you made me pick, I would say Liverpool right now, just because I think of their solidity. I think Barcelona have been exposed in a few too many games in terms of that defensive line. There is a game plan to beat them, whereas I guess PSG demonstrated one, which is just make their life a living hell for 90 minutes. But I don't think that too many teams have clearly defined a game plan to beat Liverpool, whereas I feel like there has been a way to defeat this Barcelona side. I think they've dropped more results. There have been more games where I go, oh, Barcelona left something on the table there. So I think Liverpool are, again, it's only just, but I think they're only just better than them.
One thing is for sure, they've certainly both had unbelievable seasons so far.